back to another Artifact Corner. Today we will be looking at a very decorative, but also very practical item that would be found in almost every Victorian home, the boot jack. Our boot jack is in the shape of a beetle, which was a very popular design at this period. A boot jack was a must-have for all fashionable men in the Victorian period as men's boots became more fitted. If you had a servant, you could have them help you remove your boots. But if you were on the less fortunate side, it could be almost impossible to remove your boots yourself. Enter the boot jack. Let's learn a bit more about this very helpful household item. Boot jacks have been around for hundreds of years, but not many of them survive from earlier periods due to their heavy use and the material they were commonly made of: wood. Boot jacks from the late Middle Ages were not so much used to remove tight shoes, but more for being able to get them off without having to touch them. Most people in the late medieval period walked pretty much everywhere they needed to go, and the paths were often muddy and covered in horse, cow, or sheep manure, meaning your shoes could be quite filthy. The boot jack meant you could remove them without touching them. As we move into the Victorian period, men's shoe fashions went from looser fitting boots to a slim fit that made boots quite tight. Towards the latter part of the Victorian period, women's boots also went for a much more streamlined and tight fit, so women needed boot jacks as well. Manufacturers saw the need for sturdy boot jacks, and they stepped in to make them. The most popular boot jacks during the Victorian period were made of cast iron and in the shape of insects like our beetle boot jack. This is not to say that wooden boot jacks fell out of fashion. They were very popular still and maintained their classic shape. There is a very funny anecdote in an 1876 newspaper about the importance of boot jacks. The article states as follows. One day last week, a young man in one of the rural districts went into the woods to do some work, and while there, one of his boots felt uncomfortable, and he resolved to draw it off to see what was the matter. To do so, he thought the crotch of a sapling that stood near him would answer the purpose of a boot jack. He placed his heel in the crotch and gave a pull, but he slipped and fell on the broad of his back, with one of his feet high in the air, sticking fast in his new-fashioned boot jack. From this uncomfortable position, he was unable to extricate himself, and he lay there struggling until 10 o'clock the next day, when he was discovered and released by a party of his friends who had been hunting for him all the previous night. Since his suspension, Lyman does not consider the sapling boot jack a great success. I'm quite sure his friends never let him live that experiment down. Our boot jack is in fantastic condition, likely due to the material it's made of. Because this is cast iron and was kept clean and dry, it has no rust and looks like it would have in the 1800s when it was manufactured. If you've ever used a boot jack, let us know in the comments. This is a lovely piece of everyday life in the Victorian period, and we are so lucky to have it in our collections. Thanks so much for stopping by.